Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Schiavo. I'm working with the Sum of Miss Secretariat in Communications. I'm going to steal just a couple of minutes from you to explain the housekeeping rules to make sure the webinar is a success. Thank you in the meantime for joining us. So today's meeting will be held in English. Please keep your microphone on mute unless you're speaking and use the hand function if you want to jump in at any point of the conversation. If you have any questions or would like to share any thoughts, or if you have any technical issues, please share your concerns, questions, anything through the chat function. If you are speaking and you want to jump in, kindly put the camera on if the connection allows it. And now, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our moderator, Gerda.
Thank you very much. I will not be able to moderate this event because I'm in a public situation, but Sonia is so nice to take over and it's brand new information. But good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So good to see that from the Anglophone Africa, so many countries and representatives are joining this meeting because we really want to hear from you. We want to hear from you how your country is coping with the crisis that has followed the crisis of COVID, on nutrition, on food security, on availability and affordability and accessibility of healthy and nutritious food. How is your government responding? How are you able to keep up the nutrition agenda, to invest in preventing malnutrition, but also how are you looking at the way forward? We have had so far 3 very informative webinars where focal points on behalf of countries, but also members of the different stakeholders, civil society, private sector, UN and donors were speaking up and giving their reflections on the way forward. Why is it so desperately needed? Because after the difficulties created by the normal crisis our countries are facing, like climate crisis, sometimes conflict crisis, sometimes protracted crisis, and the COVID, the food price crisis and the fuel prices are coming on top of this. And as Sun Movement, we need to exercise even more in these times the power of we, of collaborating together to make sure that we move on with the nutrition agenda and maybe to see whether even we can double down on nutrition, since we know that investing in nutrition is the best investment in development. It is $16 in return to $1 invested, and it's investing in people and people's capacity to prevent malnutrition. And then people are able to cope with all the other challenges. All is not new for you, but we want to hear your stories, how you are, for instance, anticipating to or already busy to gear up the food systems pathways in order to produce more and better in your own country. Please share, speak up, inspire each other, and a team will be listening. And I myself am curious to hear from you as well, because we find that at the global level, we hear too many global solutions. And we, you and I and all of us, we know that the solutions can only be found if you listen to people on a day-to-day basis working on the ground, in communities, in countries, trying to work together and gearing up in nutrition. So whatever you want to see reflected at the global level, be it more investment in nutrition, a better investment in food systems, whereby nutrition is a crucial part, of course, doing something against the heavy indebtion of more and more countries, etc. Please speak up and speak out, and we will make sure that your country voice will be heard at the global level, either represented by yourself or represented by me as coordinator of the Sun Movement. So without further ado, we want to hear from you. Thank you very much. I'm here with a pen and a notebook to take notes, to learn from you, and to take your clear messages on the importance of nutrition to the global, regional, and all other levels where nutrition needs to have a firm sit at the table. Back to you, Sonja.
Thank you so much, Gerda, for those introductory words. So thank you so much also for all the participants that are online. And my name is Sonia Anslan-Panzani, and I'm the head of Country Action. And I will be your moderator for this last webinar that we organized. It's the 4th one. Yesterday we had 3, like Gerda mentioned, and I'm sure that this one will be as successful as the previous ones. In order to do that, you have already received the questions. We have 5 questions for you. We know that it's a lot to ask in just 5 minutes for each country, but we are sure that you are very well prepared to do this exercise. And just as a quick reminder in terms of the questions, so question 1 is, what are the current and anticipated effects of the crisis on food and national nutrition plans implementation in your country? Second one is, how are the nutrition stakeholders being integrated into the food crisis response and preparedness planning and coordination mechanism in your country? The third one is, what are the main challenges that you encountered in addressing the food crisis in your country? Fourth one is, what are the respective solutions applied to address the challenges identified? And the last one, 5th one, is, what are the potential gaps needed the global support for action and the Sun Movement and other stakeholders to mitigate the impact on the food crisis and safeguard our nutrition gains. Thank you so much for keeping this time in mind, like 5 minutes, so that we can have a go for all the countries that are present. And if we can, I would like to suggest that Cambodia would start if they are ready to share their experiences.
Good.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ni Chamnan. We're listening to you. You have the floor.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from my country, Cambodia. Good evening. Yeah. My name is Ni Chamnan from Council for Agricultural and Rural Development of the Office of Council of Ministers. Yeah. For the question, only 1 minute only to answer each question, right? So I start from number 1. Yeah, what are the current and anticipated effects of the crisis of food and national nutrition plan implementation in your country? The royal government does not expect critical food shortage for Cambodia as a country which enjoys a strong position as a net food exporter. There are new threats to food security and nutrition as local and global food price and fuel, fertilizer, and feed price increase. This price rise as compounding economic recovery from COVID-19 impact and vulnerability to climate shock, working against the productivity gains for agriculture over recent years. As market price push nutrient-dense food further out of reach for poor households, healthy dietary practices are expected to decline further than has occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. Unless these issues are addressed, food security and nutrition will be compromised for the most vulnerable. For this reason, social assistance linkage with food security and nutrition are a key feature of national strategy. Okay, I go to the question number 2. How are nutrition stakeholders being integrated into the food crisis response and preparedness planning and coordination mechanism in your country? Okay, we must revisit the national roadmap for food system for sustainability for 2030 to assess the impact of rising price for food and agricultural input. These topics are discussed by diverse stakeholders in food security and nutrition forum at national and subnational level. Good progress has been made in extending this forum to the subnational level. The government has taken action to prevent excessive price rise and to forecast the effect of price rise and supply challenges for key sectors and for the population generally. We need to increase awareness of the challenges ahead and move into anticipatory action. This will require more time and effort to see beyond immediate challenges. Okay, question number 3. What are the main challenges that you encounter in addressing the food crisis in your country? Okay, we have 3 challenges. Number 1, increasing price and reliance on imported fuel, fertilizer, and animal feed create challenges for farm business and the national economy. Number 2, dealing with the compounding effect of the crisis on household, businesses, and national development. Number 3, extending social assistance beyond the COVID-19 pandemic and tailoring this assistance to fit changing circumstances. Okay, I go to question number 4. What are the respective solutions applied to address the challenges identified? The Royal Government applied a whole of government approach to dealing with the complex crisis. This has been highly successful during the COVID-19 pandemic. The capacity to deal with complex crises has been strengthened in Cambodia under strong leadership and national unity. To support the Royal Government's bold and holistic vision for food security and nutrition, the priority to address the challenges include priority action for dealing with rising food price and input costs whilst undergoing structural changes to the economy include the asset solution. First, number 1, support to farmers and businesses to deal with the transition to alternative farming practice to reduce dependency on imported fuel, fertilizer, and feed. Number 2, strengthening local value chains for domestic market and for import substitution, ensuring future shocks have a minimal impact on food security and nutrition. Number 3, the third solution, promote food safety and quality and reduce food loss and waste. Fourth, ongoing development of export market and quality system. The solution number 5, strengthen the use of cash assistance to mitigate short-term impact on food security and nutrition for the most vulnerable. Solution number 6, the last, promote agroecological transition in food production to reduce input costs, adapt to climate change, halt land degradation, and build soil fertility over the longer term. Okay, I go to question number 5. What are potential gaps needing global support and action from the Sun Movement and other stakeholders on the webinar topic? The funds available to fight malnutrition in all its forms are inadequate to meet the scale of the need. This holds true for application across different sectors, including social protection, health, education, agriculture, water, and sanitation. Even before the recent uptick in food and input price for agriculture, the national gap, it means a global action plan roadmap for the prevention and treatment of child wasting 2021 estimated that $25 million was needed over the next 3 years to meet essential needs and respond to acute malnutrition. But now only 31% of the fund needed have been secured. It means that around $7.7 million has been secured, that leaving a gap of $17.2 million at 2021 price. Okay, that's all from my side, country of Cambodia. So goodbye from Cambodia. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shamnan. That was extraordinary because you really thoroughly responded to all questions, and we are very delighted that you have shared this experience that is quite that shows a holistic approach with all the systems that you mentioned, and also linking it to the previous crisis, the COVID crisis, and trying to maintain the nutrition gains, and also explaining the amount that is needed to fight all forms of malnutrition, costing also the gaps. That is extremely interesting, and thank you so much again for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We will move to Yemen if Karima is available. Karima, are you there? We would like to hear from your experience in Yemen. If that is not the case, I suggest that we move to Zambia with Mr. Freddy. No answer. Or we go to Uganda with Mrs. Trudy. Or Mrs. Nebana from Sierra Leone? Neneba, sorry. Do we have Sierra Leone?
In fact, I just asked, okay, they have sent it. It's just this morning I learned about this webinar. So all these questions, maybe I will work on them later and share it with you. But in brief, what is happening in Sierra Leone is that, you know, for our country, the prices of food commodities are directly linked to the cost of fare. So as the prices are increasing, every now and then you go to the markets, the food prices keep changing. You know, there is no, anything is not stable. So prices keep moving, and a lot is going on. Even the Monday, there was a protest because of what is going on, and the Minister of Trade had to go from station to station to check whether indeed they didn't have fare, because they want the price to go up further than it is now. The current price is 22,000 leones per liter. So the dealers are still not satisfied. So the trade minister had to go from station to station, dipping in their reserve to see whether there was fare, and they were just not selling. So some amount of improvement has taken, because we see now the queues are there, but at least some stations are selling. Because it's difficult if you don't have data to say this is what is happening. So WFP, FAO, they actually undertook an assessment the last time to see how is this global crisis affecting the food security situation in the country. Unfortunately, I've not laid hands on the report yet, but things are really not too good for the average Sierra Leonean. So we imagine especially when it comes to acute malnutrition, that one will be evident, but we don't have data to back that type of thing now. So what I can say is that we'll look at the questions, and I will try to provide answers and share with you. Because I didn't even know that we had questions to answer. Unfortunately, the Sun Focal person is on leave. She's even out of the country. She just contacted me this morning and told me about this. So that's why I'm here. I'm sorry, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. Just to add to what Mary has said, I'm Bernadette Mami Aliyu, the Sun Technical Officer. just to add to what Miriam have said, we just got this one this morning. As for me, very few minutes towards the time, but a lot has been going on around our food system in Sierra Leone. And during our dialogues, we came together and then we highlighted a lot of problems or emerging issues that we have in Sierra Leone, and we find solutions as how to address it. One of them being the urban areas, the urban towns being being overpopulated, and we are trying to find ways of how we can combat that one. Sustainable consumption and production, we are seeing how we can do that one. And then we had emerging issues like climate change. We have youth migration, and land grabbing in our country, energy for food system. These were all emerging issues that came up, and we tried to see how we came up with recommendations as how to combat all of these. And like Marian have said, since we have questions that we are supposed to answer, we go through it and then we do it jointly and then we'll send to you.
Sure, thank you so much. This is much appreciated that you stepped up like this last minute. We understand that it's difficult to answer those 5 questions that easily and right away. But I appreciate what you mentioned actually around the data. It brings me back to this crucial element of importance that is data, that without data, it's actually impossible to plan accordingly and to target the interventions that are much needed. So just thank you so much for bringing this up to us. I see Ms. Bangurama again that would like to say something else.
Because I heard Bani talking about the food system. We actually had a meeting with the Minister of State for us to really come together to discuss the roadmap for the food system. So I already drafted the concept note. So the Minister of State will be sending that one out to partners, so that we can engage everyone, because out of the 18 recommended actions we came up with from the national dialogues, the president selected 8. So our discussion is going to be around those 8 in consultation with the assessment that FAO did last year, the recommendations, so that we'll try and agree on the strategies we are going to use in coming up with a roadmap for our food system. So far, that is it on that front. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bangurama, to highlight also the importance, of course, liaising with the food system approach and the roadmap, and making sure that it's adapted due to the current situation. And we are very happy to hear about the recommended actions and the ones being taken forward. So thank you so much, Sierra Leone. And if you want to bring some of the points afterwards in written, we will gladly receive them. And I would like to give the floor now to Dr. Karima from Yemen. I see her hands up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Actually, I will try just to answer all the questions in one paragraph. As you know, that Yemen is one of the countries in conflict. So I think the burden is because of the dependency on the aid. Because of the dependency on the aid from the external assistance. So this will put a great pressure because of the shortages of the fund that will eventually affect the ongoing programs in the country and also the planned ones. So very limited fund will affect the ability of the government to expand the institutional revival programs that we have been planned for a long time. These are the challenges and the gaps that we will have. During the food system dialogues, it was a great platform for all the participants from the line ministries to highlight the solutions that we need to put in place to respond to the food crisis. So I think the most important things that all the participants from all the line ministries and sectors stress on was the to limit the food loss and the food waste. So this is a very important strategies that we need to put in place so we can rationalize the national resources and we can have more effective management of the availability and accessibility to the national resources, whether financial or food or whatever resources we are talking about. So another aspect linked to this is the awareness raising. So it is very important to raise the awareness of the people, of the consumers, of the stakeholders from the private sector and everyone. So this is a very vital element that we need to work on it. Food crisis, the most part of it is the food loss and waste, and the awareness raising can do a lot. Training people, learning them is a very important issue. The last thing that I will talk about is the local communities' participation in implementing the solutions and to support all the food and nutrition security issues. So we need to have all these local communities in the heart of the interventions, as in the designing phase as well as in the implementation phase, as a recipient and as implementers. I think this is the most important here. So the SUN Secretariat is playing a very important role in this, to try to develop or to put all these strategies in concept notes and to seek the support from the donors and the international communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karima. This was very clear. And I think it's good that you already envisioned the broader picture about dependency on aid, external aid. That is exactly the kind of thinking that is super helpful to move forward for countries. And also what you mentioned in terms of limitation of food loss and weight, those are very practical solutions that can be put in place. Rationalize the national resources, the local community participation in the design and implementation of the solutions. This is also much needed. So thank you for reminding that. And in terms of the support that you are awaiting for from the SUN movement, I hear that it's quite sort of high-level advocacy to maintain funding for nutrition, if I understood you correctly.
Yes, you're right, because the SUN movement is one of the main actors for us as a secretariat at the national level, and also at the global level as a movement. So we need to put all these concept notes and projects in place and to support the implementer partners, whether from the government or from the local communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Karima, once more. And just to make sure, as a follow-up question, I just wanted to make sure that the nutrition stakeholders, the SUN actors in Yemen are well connected in the food crisis mechanism in terms of response. Is that the case?
Actually, they are very aware of the crisis because we have a new, food price effect just a few days ago. So they can see all these effects on our daily life. We have the second round of the food system dialogues. All of them are participating in this. And today I just finished the on action track 2, and I came to this meeting, and we were discussing this, the importance of the new actions that we need to take. And they said literally that the food system dialogues come in the right time, because we are speaking of the food crisis and all this, oil crisis around the world, and the effect on the accessibility and affordability of the food. So yes, of course, they are aware of this, and they are appreciating the rule of the sun movement, whether at the national, the regional, or the global level. Thank you.
This is very helpful. Thank you so much, Karima, once more. If we have someone from Kenya, who could be Ms. Gladys, then I would like to hand you over the floor. Gladys, are you there? If it's not the case, do we have someone from Lesotho?
Okay, in the absence of Gladys, this is Edgar from Sun CSA Kenya. So I didn't receive the questions beforehand, but I'll try to just paint a picture of what's happening in Kenya. So that you have the experience. So just to give a context, Kenya currently we are experiencing high cost of food that keeps on rising on a weekly basis. Because of this, we are seeing that this has placed a number of vulnerable populations into a food insecurity situation. And we are witnessing that quite a number of households are now reducing in terms of the number of meals that they are eating on a daily basis. And this is actually worsening the malnutrition status in Kenya, especially the arid and semi-arid lands, but also in Nairobi, because also in Nairobi we are having quite a number of informal settlements. So in terms of the mechanisms that have been put in place to try to respond to this, so from the Ministry of Health, under the Division of Nutrition, they have already developed a response plan that highlights and also maps out areas that have been affected, and also the need that is required so that we are able to respond effectively. And this has been shared with quite a number of stakeholders, and also we are discussing this. Under the Ministry of Agriculture, they are actually carrying out a weekly monitoring of food prices and also food availability. And this is a number of food, from the staples to vegetables. And we also advise them to also look at issues with milk and eggs, so that we determine the quantities of food available, but also in terms of the prices as they keep on changing. And in this, we are involved from the nutrition and food system stakeholders, and we meet with the Ministry of Agriculture on a weekly basis to be able to review that report and also discuss it at length, so that we come up with some critical solutions. The Ministry of Agriculture have also waived some of the costs and the taxes that are levied on some staple food, so that at least that can reduce the pressure on the food prices. And also they have given a quota. They have given a quota whereby private sector and the millers can also be able to import some grains into the country, so that we can have some food. So in terms of the challenges, I think the main challenge that we are facing, it's because we are facing an election in the next 33 days. And you know that then changes, and all the focus now goes into election. And we've also looked at the manifestos of these key presidential candidates, and they are promising to reduce the food prices. They're promising to add, to remove some of these levies and provide incentives in terms of fertilizer. So we hope that after election, we'll see these promises being met, and then the food prices will go down, and eventually the cost of of food will dramatically go down. So in terms of the solutions, I think right now we as stakeholders, we are providing quite a number of things that we feel that needs to be done. For example, we advise the Minister of Agriculture to be able to allow private millers, but also private people to be able to import food into the country. We've advised them in terms of being able to reduce the cost of fertilizer, because right now in some areas people are now planting. We've also advised them in terms of revising the cost of, the prices at which they purchase maize, so that they can be stored into grain. But most of these things are relied upon once now the new government coming. So we are at that limbo whereby the government cannot actively implement some of these guidance that we provide, but we are waiting for after the election. So in terms of the potential gaps that we're needing at global support, and this I'm speaking as in from the civil society perspective, is that we'll need high-level mobilization of our policymakers at that high level. And I know Madam Gada knows how to do this in terms of just being able to speak to maybe the president and the people at the high level, so that we can have a roundtable discussion in terms of how we can mitigate the impact of food prices, because it is something that they've actually promised in their manifestos. So for me, really, would be my clerical call, that we'll need at that higher level, but also support in terms of being able to launch our Africa Year of Nutrition, because then that also will give us a platform for us to be able to discuss at a regional level and also continental level at the effects of the food crisis that actually we are facing at the country level. So those are the ones that I have on top of my head. I've not written them anywhere, so I'll be glad to get in contact with Gladys and other stakeholders to provide a written format in terms of where we are as a country level. Otherwise, thank you so much.
Thank you, Edgar, for sharing this experience of Kenya from the civil society perspective. Yeah, I found it extremely interesting what you mentioned about the weekly monitoring of food prices and availabilities of food, and also the fact that you're discussing to not only see what's happening, but what are the decisions that being made based on the data available. So this is extremely inspiring. And also, I think that you highlighted quite a couple of challenges in terms of the elections upcoming, but those also, I see that you see them as opportunities. Same thing for the African Year of Nutrition. You have great momentum to push for some more advocacy for the nutrition to be really placed on the highest possible level on the agenda, and for the food crisis to be perceived also as a nutrition crisis, and for the nutrition gains not to be forgotten. So thank you so much, and I hope also that the link is being made with the food systems pathways and dialogues. And with that, I think we will go to Lesotho, if we have someone. Mr. Elias Titseto, are you there?
Yes, he's here. Good day, everyone. I'm Sebota. We are not aware of the questions, so we'll respond to the written responses. We'll do the written responses later on, but Mr. Elias is going to give a brief of what is happening now.
Sure, thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. May I start by reminding everybody about the nature, especially geographic nature of our country, as we are surrounded completely by South Africa. And you find that our agricultural system, so that it's subsistent largely, yet even though it is subsistent, you'll find that the practice of subsistence farming, it's largely in our most remote rural areas in the country, where you also have the more urban areas dependent on imports of food and any food stuff you can think of from South Africa. In fact, our imports for food from South Africa make up about over 80% of what we actually consume in Lesotho. So one can already imagine that the crisis of food prices, the increase of food prices across the globe has got a very negative impact on our nutritional status, as it were. In particular, we are faced with the problem of increased prices of cooking oil. I think that is the problem that we are seeing more than any product that we may talk about, because in Lesotho, we don't have bread as the staple. So wheat in this regard is not much of a problem. However, even the maize or corn that we have to import from South Africa is still affected by the rising prices that we are experiencing right now. These problems, especially in the rural areas, we'll realize that these are problems that we are facing whilst we are actually during what you call the lean season here at home, because that is also the nature of our agriculture, where you find that we are unable to produce our food, even that from our subsistence production all year round. We have times of the year that most households will be having some food reserves, but we know that those reserves most of the time do not see households through the whole year. And this rising food prices that we are seeing right now are being experienced whilst we are actually in the lean season. That means that even the production, the subsistence production that was realized by our rural communities is probably already finished, because this is during the lean season. And for that matter, our yield was also affected by a lot of heavy rains for this year. So that means that we cannot really count on the reserves that we have from our subsistence farming, to the extent that now we have to rely almost entirely on importing food from South Africa. And most households are unable to afford this. And when you look at the price of fuel itself, in particular paraffin, this exacerbates this problem, because you'll find that most households actually, at least in the urban areas, actually use paraffin for cooking, where you find that even though it is winter right now, most families are not buying paraffin for warming up their households. Instead, they are doing so for basically to cook. And given the prices that we are experiencing at the present moment, most households are unable to afford to buy paraffin for cooking. And for those that are still doing so, they have to compromise some other essential foodstuffs that should be consumed for households' nutrition security. So the household security, food security is in itself compromised in that way. There are some moves to try and address some of this, in particular with regard to the price of paraffin. Our government has made some subsidy that, well, when we observe, we don't believe this kind of subsidy will have that much impact on trying to relieve the stress of paraffin for cooking in the households, because all that has been done is to make sure that our petrol, our diesel, and our paraffin will remain on the same price until December. And where most of us from the nutrition fraternity feel that this would have been much more successful if we were to use another strategy when it comes to paraffin, where some kind of specific subsidy would be injected into the price of paraffin. We also have our actors that are involved, especially the Ministry of Agriculture, trying to put in some structures or some strategies to address the rising food crisis. And these are particularly activities that are involved with trying to improve our smallholder agricultural production in order so that at least reliance in the future may not be so much on imported foods, but rather from food that is produced locally and food that relies on indigenous food products. Other efforts that have been developed to try and address this are to be appreciated from the food systems commitments that we developed recently, but we also have a challenge with those because some will remember, I think, from the Secretariat that we're not eventually able to register our commitments. So if we also get some assistance, I think Modu will have to take it up and see if we can be assisted to actually register our commitment so that we can follow the suggested food pathways that we have in those commitments, because they actually we have recognized that they can do something in the mitigation of the situation that we are in right now. We also have a challenge of trying to be sure to target the right population groups when we implement our interventions in addressing this rising food crisis. Because so far, we do not have much information or data that can help us in order to be able to target specifically the most affected population groups in the country. So we are going to have to make efforts to try and create this data so that we can target our interventions. And I think finally, that much as it is also an opportunity, but we still face the same challenges as our colleagues from Kenya, where our parliament will be dissolving in, I think, about less than 2 weeks now. And therefore, the administration not being really focused as one would really like on the situation that we find ourselves in right now. But our hope, of course, is that once we have a new government, then we'll be able to address these challenges appropriately. Just to reiterate, to finalize, that since we were not able to get the guiding questions that our colleagues have been referring to, we can beef up this report as soon as we have those questions and send.
Yes, we understood you. Thank you so much for all those elements. This is really interesting. And at first, I was a bit wondering in terms of the main changes from your production size, not to be that relying on the importation, but then you really mentioned how you have like new food systems commitments that will support more the local production. So this is good to have this kind of further thinking. And also, yeah, in terms of helping you with registering the commitments, be sure that it will be the case. Medu and Tendai will support you gladly. Thank you so much, and we will move to Zimbabwe if Zimbabwe is here. Thank you once more.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I guess you can hear me.
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So for Zimbabwe, I can highlight, I can try to respond to the questions in a paragraph. I not organized according to the questions, but I'm sure my presentation is going to be answering to some of the questions. So firstly, as a country, we know that as Zimbabwe, our food and nutrition security status is dependent on cereal grain, mainly maize and wheat. And although not direct imports, although we don't get direct imports from Russia and Ukraine, the imports from Russia and Ukraine are limited. The global cereal shortage is likely going to result in the scramble for the available grain, cereal grain in other global suppliers. And this can push the prices higher. So such prices increase will affect Zimbabwe. And as of 2021, as a country, our imported wheat import dependence ratio was around 41.7%, and 16% of that was from Russia and Ukraine. So you can see that the conflict here can affect our import supply. But however, as a country, we are expecting a harvest of around 336,000 metric tons of wheat against a wheat requirement of between 350 to 450,000 metric tons of wheat annually. Also, our imports as a country, about 250,000 tons of our nitrate fertilizer comes from Russia annually. So while we still have stock to allow the growing of our winter wheat this season, there's likely little left for the summer crop, that is the maize, which is mainly the country's staple food. And if we are going to source the fertilizer elsewhere, the fertilizer prices is highlighted by the colleagues in the meeting. The prices are likely going to increase, thereby affecting the final product. Looking at how we are coordinated as the multi-sectorial platform, the Sun players have been engaging in undertaking our annual assessments, the Zimbabwe Vulnerability and annual assessments, where we try to assess the food and nutrition security situation, mostly in our rural communities, which make up most of our population. And we managed to undertake this assessment in May, and a report has just been finalized, and I can share with the Secretariat to share with other countries, where we are seeing that we still have pockets of people who are vulnerable, and our food insecurity is estimated to be around 38% during the peak hunger period. And this is done through a multi-sectorial approach, and we managed to collect the data using the different sectors at ward and district level. And we managed to present the data again at the multi-sectorial platform as high as cabinet level, where the results were discussed, and some of the actions that were agreed by sectors to try to mitigate or to correct the situation. We include the following. I may not exhaust the whole list. I'll share the report. It actually outlines some of the actions that are being done. Firstly, I'll talk about around resilience building. So we have an all-inclusive disaster risk reduction coordination structure from sub-national level up to even cabinet level. And this aims to bring in different actors to be able to capacitate our communities on how best they can respond to shocks at local level through use of local structures, so that there's the interface between policy and implementation and cushioning of households, especially at household level. I'll also talk about the irrigation development, where we are saying as a country there is an accelerated agriculture revitalization program where we are trying to rehabilitate our existing structures so that when faced with such a global crisis, be it this war and even other climate related shocks, we are able to still produce for our country. And we have also adopted climate smart agriculture up to climate proof production, where we are saying is part of our programming. For example, we are calling it the Fumvunza or Intwasa program, where we are saying is the country, we need to scale up and roll up uptake of climate smart agriculture. And under this, again, we've tried to come up with food swaps arrangements. You know, we have traditional grains, but due to preferences and other reasons, their uptake are very low. So as a government, we've managed to arrange for food swap, where if someone has produced small grains or traditional grains, they can easily swap that for the maize grain being facilitated by the ministry responsible for agriculture. And also issues to do with post-harvest management, where we are seeing that most of our population, they are using ordinary rooms for storage, although we have those that we are using granaries. We are saying we need to scale up on post-harvest management issues so that we preserve the harvest that we would have acquired at household level. Then I can talk about issues to do with social protection in anticipation of the vulnerable populations that we are going to experience as a country. As a government, we are saying we need to retarget, to improve our targeting exercises. And this is done in line or together with our development partners that are in the social protection area, so that we improve on programming and avoid issues of double dipping. That way we can maximize on the available resources that we have. So for us, we really take up, we really appreciate the support that we get from the SAN Secretariat, and we will continuously tap into the office with support to do with even resource mobilization and even advocacy, continuous engagement with the policymakers, and also to keep the momentum, you know, advocates around nutrition outcomes. You know, as our food systems traditionally, they used to produce just for the cereal part, but we would want to continuously make sure nutrition remains topical, even in crisis, so that we don't compromise on the quality of diets. We would also want to even assess the investment that we have done to really see how much we have invested as a country with regards to nutrition. This is about tracking for financial resources or investments. So these are some of the areas that would tap into the SAN Secretariat, and of course continuously engaging with the data, where we can even come up with thematic topics to really deep dive into existing data that we have as a country, to say, are there any relationships? Can we attribute the nutrient outcomes we are experiencing as a country to a particular shock or maybe to the price increase, so that we document the issues and using evidence on the ground. With this, I think I've managed to highlight or to respond to most of the questions. Thank you.
You have indeed. Thank you so much, Ms. Sibusino. It was a very rich content. And although you're, of course, facing many challenges, we can hear from you that you're also extremely resilient, and you have innovative solutions that you apply, thinking also about climate smart agriculture. So I see that also you have the willingness to share with other countries, and this is all what the SAN movement is about, you know, these peer-to-peer exchanges. So please, if you have more in terms of content on those climate smart agriculture experiences and on the way that you share, and you use the data, because this was also very inspiring from your presentation, using the different sectors. You know, most of the time we hear a lot of challenges around having a multi-sectoral information system for nutrition. So we would like to hear from you more in terms of, in case you have documented approaches and yeah, documents available, so that we can learn from them. And it's well received in terms of the support that you would like to have in terms of advocacy, resource mobilization, and keeping the momentum, like you say, for nutrition to remain topical. Thank you again. We will now move to the Gambia, please.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes, you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Bakari Jallo. I am speaking on behalf of the Sun Focal person who is engaged on other activities. I'll try to address the issues as per the questions. And for the first question, what is the current situation and what is anticipated? Just an overview, we know the Gambia relies heavily on imports for our food needs. Some surveys have shown that over 50% of our food needs is imported to the country. Because of that, the current situation is such that the prices are hiking, they're increasing, and they're increasing very rapidly. We are also experiencing shortages of some food commodities. These two issues are likely to lead to a reduction in the diversity of the diets, the portion sizes, the number of meals. And as a coping mechanism for many of the households, they will resort to selling their possessions, such as animals, especially those animals they use in agriculture, as well as their farming implements. This also have the follow-on effect of a reduction in the productivity at household level. So what are we doing, and what is the multi-sectoral level doing to address or to mitigate the impact of this food crisis? Just towards the end of 2020, we had the National Nutrition Policy finally approved at Cabinet. So the multi-sectoral nutrition action plan is currently being developed, and it's at an advanced stage of costing the various activities, which will be used for resource mobilization and continuing to implement activities that would address nutrition. We are also looking at convening the National Nutrition Council meeting. This is comprised of 12 of our ministers, and it's chaired by the Vice President. And during this meeting, key amongst the issues that will be discussed would be the issue of the current food and nutrition situation, and trying to identify ways that can be used to accelerate mitigation of the crisis. What are the challenges that we are facing? As already mentioned by others, we are also experiencing virtually the same. We have limited data to help us determine the extent of the situation, but also the extent of the impact of the food and nutrition crisis. Well, this is another challenge we are also experiencing, as many other countries, is the rising cost of fuel, which directly also affects the cost of the food. But because of also the current situation in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, the imports are also affected, because the sources of the foods are around that area as well. And so we are having problems in getting the imports delivered on time. And that's one of the reasons why currently we have started seeing shortages of some food items. Thirdly, Gambia is very prone to climate variability, which as we know, we are entering into the rainy season. We are also entering into the lean season for availability of foods, because the foods that were produced during the last cropping season of 2021, most of them are being used up now. And as we move deeper into the rainy season, which started in June, food stocks in the households will be going down a lot. And so people will depend more on imported food commodities. So the climate variability can lead to the reduction in the amount of rainfall, sometimes dry spells during the rainy season, which can affect the productivity of the crops. But also we do experience storms which can destroy the farmlands and the crops that are being produced on those farmlands. So what are we doing? What are we doing in terms of addressing the situation, in the current situation? We had already started a social safety net program by providing unconditional cash transfers to vulnerable households across the most vulnerable districts in the country. We are scaling this up. We started with 3 districts. Now we are going to 20 districts to provide cash support to households that are classified as being extremely poor. And also a lot of advocacy is going around to scale up the target for the social safety net program, to look at extend the program, because the program is not within the urban areas. And we know also within the urban areas, we have a lot of poverty. So we are looking at how do we scale up moving from the rural areas towards the urban areas to also address urban poverty with the social safety net programs. The other things that we are also doing is we have already been implementing programs that were nutrition sensitive and nutrition specific nutrition programs that are trying to improve the situation of nutrition in the country. So we will continue to strengthen and scale up these programs. Here we are talking about programs such as those related to improving optimal infant and young child feeding practices, water and sanitation and hygiene, the management of severe and moderate acute malnutrition, and so forth and so forth. There are a host of other things that we are doing to support improvements in nutrition. We are also intensifying our social and behavior change communication in trying to address local production and consumption of foods so that we reduce the dependence on imported foods as well. Although the fertilizer that is provided to farmers is still expensive, but due to this situation, the government has already adapted programs to try to reduce the cost of fertilizer that is being shared with farmers. Although schools are also about to close, but there is an ongoing school feeding program for children who are attending these schools. Government has also introduced subsidies on fuel, rice, and flour to help mitigate this problem of the increasing price as well. Over the years, also the country has adopted climate smart interventions, especially those related to the agriculture value chain for food production, local food production. So what would we require support from the Sun movement is to we have a problem of funding of nutrition and food security programs. Many of the donors look at the size of the country in terms of population, but they're also looking at our current nutrition situation, which is improving. And they use that against us in terms of providing funds. And we feel that, yes, we are making headway in addressing the malnutrition in the country, but this has to be sustained. And to sustain this, we will need support. and financial support will be needed. Hence, we would be very pleased if the SUN Secretariat could help us make funding agents, donors, bilateral, multilateral, to understand our situation. If funding for our interventions is dwindling, then we may our current situation may reverse, and we will fall back in the improvements that we are making. So to sustain the gains we have already made, we would still need a lot of support from our partners, both the bilateral and multilateral partners. So,
thank you so much.
My colleague, yeah. So my colleague is also here, but this is what I have. But my colleague could add one or two if they have. Okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry, but thank you very much for the sake of time, because we still have many countries to go. I think you've covered so much, Mr. Bakari. Thank you so much in terms of the effects of the food crisis, what you expect in terms of the next effects on the reduction of diversity of the diets, number of meals. Population might sell their assets in terms of animal that they have for family implementation. And also you highlighted very well what is the MSP doing to mitigate the impact, and the fact that you're really working in a multi-sectoral aspect, and not forgetting also the sound basis that you need for nutrition, not forgetting about the fact that yes, you have a national policy approved, but you need the national action plans to be also finalized and costed, and it's at advanced stage. So congratulations to keep this momentum. And also thank you for raising again this issue that we hear a lot from you today on the limited availability of data to actually determine the impact of this food and nutrition crisis, and also to target the areas that are most likely to be affected. And thank you also for highlighting also the importance of looking at systemic changes in terms of the climate vulnerability also. Social safety nets also, this is quite interesting to hear that you went from 3 to 22 districts being covered with this, and hopefully in the determination of the criteria of a very poor household, you also include malnutrition as an indicator. Yes, I think this is also very clear in terms of the support from the SUN movement that you expect. It's true that some of you countries, when you progress with the indicators, it's quite difficult to make the case that you still need to have funding for nutrition in order to keep those good results, and we will try to support you in that. Thank you, and with that being said, we will move to Ethiopia. Thank you. I think Ethiopia should be ready now.
Hi, Maria, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, Dr. Sisi. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So I will try to respond to the 5 questions as quick as I can. Thank you so much for giving us opportunity to share our experiences in terms of the food crisis response. So for the first question, what are the current and anticipated effects? As you know, we did our mini DHS in 2019. And that DHS finding shows that the prevalence of wasting was 7%, underweight 21%, and stunting was 37%. Now we are facing the COVID and also the food crisis, and we expect this situation could worsen, and currently we are doing the National Food and Nutrition Strategy baseline, which is we started in 2021. So we will be seeing the current situation in terms of how the situation will look like at a country level. But in terms of the effects, the first one is the increased inaccessibility of nutritious and safe foods. Nutritious and safe foods are becoming more and more unaffordable for the most vulnerable population. We did the cost and affordability of nutrient-dense diet study, where we found that around 7 in 10 pregnant lactating mothers cannot afford nutrient-dense food. This is before crisis. So with this crisis, we expect the situation could worsen. The second is in terms of the current effect is increased vulnerability to food and nutrition insecurity. The food crisis on top of the climate change, drought, the impact of COVID and the conflict in Ethiopia are making increasing number of our citizens, especially pregnant lactating mothers, adolescents and children to be vulnerable to food and nutrition insecurity. Especially in conflict and drought affected areas in Tigray, Amhara, Afar, Oromia, Somali, southern nations and Southwest, people are really affected by the food crisis, and also they are increasingly more vulnerable, when these situations are compounded by other compounding factors. The third is in terms of the current effect is the loss of household assets. Because of the food crisis and also the drought and conflict, a number of households in Ethiopia are losing their seeds, livestock that they were getting nutrient-dense foods like milk, and also days of livestock in areas where there is a drought. So in terms of the anticipated effect, it is recognized that the food crisis could result in increasing malnutrition and infections, resulting in high morbidity and mortality rates, and also the negative effect in overall economic and social development of our country. It could have also have unacceptable human consequence in individual communities and the entire nation if it is not effectively addressed. So in terms of the second question, the nutrition stakeholders, how we are working together to respond for the crisis. Based on our past experiences, we have a very strong multi-sectoral coordination platform to respond to such mechanisms of food and nutrition crisis, both at national and subnational level. So these response mechanisms are multi-sectoral in nature and composed both government, non-government, and also other stakeholders, in some areas, private sectors. And we are using these country-led mechanisms to manage the food crisis. Regarding the food system, the Ethiopian food system led by the highest government leadership, we have a technical as well as core group established for its development. Currently, we have finalized the roadmap, and also costing is being finalized. And the Ethiopian food system recognizes food crisis as one challenge for food system transformation. And in this regard, we have already developed 6 clusters, and one of the 6 clusters in the entire 22 game-changing solutions is managing and mainstreaming risk and also protecting the poor, which will be responding to this food crisis. In terms of the challenges, the 3 high-level challenges are the supply interruption of large import products such as wheat and oil. Increasing cost of fuel and fertilizers is becoming more and more a challenge, and also funding of the shortage of funding for the various government operations, and also the food price inflation. So these are the 3 key critical challenges. And just to give you some highlight in terms of the import products, especially wheat and oil, as a country, we import a huge metric tons of wheat from US, Argentina, Ukraine, Russia, and Bulgaria. So the effect, especially with Ukraine-Russia conflict, has really affected the supply and availability of the import products, especially wheat in Ethiopia, as well as oil. In terms of oil, Ethiopia imports large quantities of soybean and palm oil, which is also, higher than, the amount of exports that we earn from the oil seed. So it has also created a lot of foreign currency shortage to import these products as a country. In terms of fuel and fertilizers, it is still becoming a challenge because the fuel price is increasing, fertilizer is also increasing. So that is now becoming more and more a challenge, especially for millions of farmers, where we are now as of June to September, this is the main harvest season. And if farmers cannot really get the fertilizers, it's going to be very difficult to get an adequate harvest. In terms of the inflation, the annual inflation rate we are now is at the highest peak since 2011 in November. So that is also affecting both the food price as well as also other commodity prices in the country. So number 4, what solutions are being provided to address this challenge? The first thing is the government has already waived tax exemption import for the agricultural products, including fertilizer, seeds, other agricultural imports. So this is also encouraging for the farmers at least to get these products. The second one is strengthening the food product distribution program using subsidiary shops. In Ethiopia, especially for the poor and vulnerable communities, at sub-district level, there are the food product distribution shops where poor people can go there and buy wheat flour, sugar, cooking oil, and other products. So that subsidiary, shops programs are also being supported by the government, and they are also providing access to food, especially for the most vulnerable citizens. The third is we are also working in terms of preventing the poor and vulnerable citizens. We are also working with the partners, especially the big programs that we address the poor and most vulnerable population, including the Productive Safety Net program, provision of fresh food using digital vouchers. This is especially for pregnant and lactating mothers, and also having expanding the school meal program for as part of the school feeding program in primary schools. This is also encouraging the poor and most vulnerable people to have to protect their asset as well as also create asset and also get some income, as well as also send their children to school. Government has also approved, the fourth one is a policy framework for private sectors to import food products without tax. So this is also helping the country, the private sector to engage into food products importation without tax. The other is also the government is moving toward this targeted subsidiary for fuel. As you know, the fuel price is increasing. Even if the market price for fuel purchase increases, the government has also developed a targeted subsidiary fuel ration, especially for the transport section, so that the poor and most vulnerable can still be addressed without increasing the transportation fee. The last one is we have a huge and also number of ongoing programs, including the Sakota Declaration, the Food and Nutrition Strategy, the National Wash Food Program, the Productive Safety Net Program, and also the Urban Safety Net Program. All these programs, including the school feeding program, these are ongoing programs. The government is making more and more investment for this so that this program could also address the poor. The final one is in terms of what are the potential gaps needing global support from Sun Movement and other stakeholders is the first one is to support the government and also development partners in Ethiopia to expand nutrient-dense local foods production using local resources. We have a lot of water potential in Ethiopia. We have arable land in Ethiopia. So I think if the Sun Movement and also other stakeholders support us in expanding nutrient-dense local food production using available local resources, I think that will really help to resolve the food crisis. The government is also currently expanding, irrigation, especially during the dry season, in terms of especially wheat production. I think this kind of production will really help to address the food crisis gap. The second thing is increasing support for effective utilization of local resources from direct investment to reduce import substitution. In Ethiopia, we have a lot of the industrial parks which are really underutilized. So if Sun Movement and other stakeholders will really help us to produce a large amount of wheat flour, oil, and also other products using these massive industrial parks, That will really help in terms of reducing the import substitution. The third one is supporting the government in mobilizing resources to finance a homegrown economic reform. We have already developed a 10 years strategic plan from 2021-2030, which is built on homegrown economic reform, providing local solutions for the local problem. So if the Sun Movement and also global stakeholders support us to address issues of the, our local problems using the homegrown economic reform and also the national strategic plan, that will really address the food crisis, as well as also other challenges, including unemployment and also other things. The fourth one is supporting the government and its partners to avail nutrient-dense foods, seeds and fertilizers to the farmers and also families using the local industrial parks. So I think this is the same, but this is specifically focusing on how could we produce nutrient-dense foods, seeds and fertilizers locally so that we can really avail for the families and the farmers. And the last one is to support the government subsidiary program, specifically that targeted the poor and the most vulnerable. We have what we call it the largest PSNP, maybe the largest in Africa, which is a productive safety net program. We have the biggest national school feeding program. We have big job creation program for unemployed users and also the entire population. So I think if such kind of government-led programs, including the subsidiary programs, are supported, it will really address the food crisis. I thank you. Back to you, Marine.
Thank you. This is Sonia Dorjasisi, but it's Maria's computer, but all good.
Okay, sorry for that.
It's okay, no worries. But in any case, thank you so much for your presentation. It was really rich, very, very complete. And I really appreciate the fact that you came up with so many solutions on tax exoneration for importation, on strengthening the food distribution program, on safety net programs, on digital vouchers, on school meal program expansion, policy framework for policy sector, and this extremely good practice that you have that we know of, the Secota Declaration from your country, Ethiopia. The gaps are also very, very clear. So thank you for that. And we hope to hear from you more also in terms of all the documents that you may have to support us in sharing all those good practices that you have that might inspire other countries. And with that being said, I would like to give the floor to Zambia. Thank you. Good, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I would like to say, Sonia, if you allow me, I would like to say something because I need to move on. I would like to thank all the participants and those who are still to speak up for their very clear messages on all the topics. Thank you so much. And I can fully agree, local solutions for local problems, and that will be the leading phrase for all my visits and contributions at global level. I will be a strong advocate and the whole global support team with me to make sure your voice will be heard at the right places. Thank you very much. Please move on, go on. Yeah, never give up. Bye-bye.
Bye. We will now hear from Zambia, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria. Indeed, I won't follow the 4 questions, but I will try to respond and give a quick snapshot of what is happening on the ground here in Zambia, situated in Southern Africa.
If I can, sorry to interrupt, if I can suggest, as we are a bit lacking time, if you could emphasize a bit the solutions maybe and how we could support and not taking too long on the situation, because I think that the situation unfortunately is a lot, it's quite similar to other countries. Thank you so much.
Indeed, thank you very much. So as other countries have indicated, indeed the prices of most of the food commodities have been actually on the higher side, such that most of the households have not been able to access. And the major drivers, of course, as I've indicated, is the COVID-19 and of course the the fuel crisis, I mean, the fuel prices that have been adjusted every month. So in terms of strategies to mitigate, one, government, of course, has increased the social cash transfer, and that is in the short term. And also the National Food Reserve Agency has been, of course, requested to offload some maize stocks from the last farming season to try and stabilize the maize price, which is actually increasing every now and then. Fortunately for Zambia, the wheat price, the price of bread and bread products has been stable because most of the wheat is produced locally. And of course, the government in the long term, they've actually increased what they call Constituency Development Fund. This is where now communities are expected to apply, on various livelihood projects so that they can improve on their incomes and so forth. Then we just did our National Food Consumption Survey, where we found that actually the consumption of fortified and biofortified foods was low. And we are hoping that once the report is finalized, we should be able to influence government policy on how to proceed, especially to increase on the biofortified foodstuffs, to increase on micronutrient intake. In terms of other solutions is that within the scaling up nutrition in the 42 out of 116 districts, we have seen quite a lot of innovation, particularly in value addition, to try and look at other local foods to enrich them, to make them nutrient dense. It's a process that is really showing some good results. Also, there's been improvement in the processing and preservation in an effort to minimize food shortages as well as losses. So this is actually going on well. And of course, while we appreciate inflation has moved from double digit to single digit, but of course the prices still remain on the higher side. And these are the issues that the government are trying to address, particularly in the context of debt relief as well. So basically in terms of support, we basically look at the issues of advocacy and more technical guidance on how we manage some of these shocks, and we are ready to learn from other countries how they are managing. In short, that's what I can say from the Zambian context. Over. Thank you. Over. I'm done.
Many thanks for sharing all this with us. Very interesting elements from Zambia. And especially it was quite interesting to know that at least for the wheat production, you're stable and you're not impacted because of your local production. So going back to Dr. Cissé, now famous say local solution for local problems. And we will now move to Ghana. I think Ghana is ready to take the floor. Thank you. It was Mary, no? Mary, are you there?
Yes, my apologies. I was just getting ready to sign off because I have to be in a meeting.
No worries. You can go ahead.
I think that you've indicated that the sources of the problems are common, and the impact of all of this, the COVID pandemic and then the Russia-Ukraine war has actually caused food inflation in the country, especially for those who depend a lot on food import, and even for local food because of the disruption of the energy and commodity market, especially with the fertilizer imports. And so what we are trying to do, government is trying to do, is to reduce our dependence on imported fertilizer. So we are expanding fertilizer production at home. We are also ensuring that the planting season, the farmers are given the necessary support, and we do have a buffer stock mopping up any excess production so that prices will be stabilized in the long term and farmers are also not going to suffer. Government has put together an interministerial committee to actually look at the argument from the Ministry of Agriculture is that we have no problem with food. And so basically that committee that has been set up is to devise ways to ensure that food that is available and logged in the hinterland is actually made available to urban centers. And they are also going to be accessible to those who really need them. We are also looking at social protection. Before, when COVID came, we looked at a social protection program, which unfortunately has come to an end. We didn't anticipate this Russia-Ukraine war, which means that we have to ensure that household food security is not compromised. So in the broader scheme of working together to integrate our food systems commitments, our nutrition for growth, and then the SAN 3.0 commitment into our national development policy frameworks, we are planning with the sectors to come up with a composite plan that will integrate this emergency dimension, emergency response dimension as well. I'm excited that the WFP, we are working with the WFP to work on a fill the nutrient gap study that will focus on healthy food. The initial one that was carried on was on staples this time around, especially with the development of the food-based dietary guidelines. We're going to have opportunity to actually look at access to healthy diet and devise social protection measures to ensure that those that are vulnerable are reached. And another impact also is that I think I've spoken about this elsewhere, that we are in debt distress. And just this week, the government unwillingly had to accept that the support from IMF, the analysis is ongoing as we speak. And I hope that going forward, the discussions that GEDA is going to look at the whole issue of fiscal distress for a lot of countries and make sure that there is some room for a breather, that the international community will look at all of these financial arrangements and make sure that countries that are distressed get a breather. I think that basically that is all I have to share on Ghana. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mary. This was very, very clear, especially your efforts on trying to reduce the dependency around importation and namely on fertilizers, and noticing that, of course, even when local food is not directly impacted, it's still impacted through the rise in energy prices. So thank you for all these elements. And we will now would like to hear from South Sudan, from Sudan first and then South Sudan. Thank you. Do we have someone from Sudan? Hello? Yes, Ms. Najla? Yes, we can hear you. You can go ahead. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I can say for Sudan, as you know, Sudan is suffering from persisting political instability. Is already highly vulnerable to the global food and nutrition crisis. I'll go very quickly about the very unique situation analysis for Sudan, and then I will go for the solution. And later on, I can send a very structured and concrete response for the 5 questions you already displayed. Sudan is definitely facing a very bad situation in terms of food security. And this is already driven by plummeting microeconomic situation of the Sudan. This is very much our affected significantly diminished household purchasing power. Because really, if you see year-on-year inflation rates, which already was 378% in May 2021, and now it's almost 192.2% in May 22. This is an estimate. And this rate is not expected to further decrease. In addition to this, affected the economic situation is no more implementation of any economic reforms that is already started early last year. All this now, it remain on hold due to the suspension of the major economic support by the international community for Sudan. So this all affected the microeconomic situation in Sudan very much. Other reason maybe it's early onset lean season due to below average 21-22 harvest. Third point, it can be a conflict. Still, we have a continued conflict, including displacement, a lot of displacement. Already we have 3.2 million people displaced in end 2021. And this is additionally, we have more 84,000 by OCHA report from June to May 22. Definitely, Ukraine crisis is significantly affected Sudan, as Sudan is consuming high depends on this, the consumption of the wheat in Sudan is very high. And this is mainly depend from import from Russia and Ukraine, which is 60% from the import. Already Sudan is 85% of Sudan annual requirement from the wheat is made through imports. And Ukraine and Russian is already 60% from this 85%. This is all the reason, mainly affected the food security, insecurity, and nutrition, very significant. Now we have 4.1 million acute malnourished under 5 and pregnant and lactating women is already require very urgent life-saving humanitarian assistance. And in addition to that, we have 11.7 people insecure in Sudan. May I can send more details about the situation in Sudan, but this is generally to show you to what extent Sudan will be affected with the global crisis of food security, food crisis. So the main solution for this is now SUN is currently doing the multi-sectoral national plan with all the stakeholders. And this is led by government, although we have Federal Ministry of Health government very committed to communicate with all other ministries, but high-level political commitments is not priority for them now, these issues, because there is instability in the country. Although we are trying to support and integrate with the agriculture ministry, and we already do the food security national dialogue, a lot of gap, and to improve the agriculture production, to scale up nutrition in terms of prevention and treatments is required for Sudan. Also, we need there is a very high need for Sudan to map the vulnerability itself and to know exactly to have a regular information about the food and nutrition information. So to be able to have an effective and effective target for most affected population. As I mentioned, we need really to scale the both treatment and prevention of acute malnutrition across the states in Sudan, and improving access of the basic services, especially health and wash. And this is mainly to have a focus on the most affected, emergency affected areas. Strengths the monitoring and surveillance nationwide, as I mentioned, is very important, especially on the hotspot areas. promotion good nutritional practice at household level, and how having more nutrition sensitive activities like home gardening and education, awareness of food and water safety. All this is most required in this critical time. Financial issue is a big problem because we have a lot of financial gap and in nutrition intervention and food system intervention. We are now dealing with the agriculture about the collation of the food summit, and we are trying to get fund for food system sensitive nutrition strategic plan we already developed. At the same time, we are working on nutrition multi-sectoral plan based on the up-to-date strategy and policy we have in nutrition in the country. But still, there is a lot of financial gap to to meet the requirement of scaling up nutrition in Sudan. I'll stop here. This is generally the need in the situation. I can send more details about the situation and the requirement to respond for the current situation in Sudan later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Najla. It was very clear, very comprehensive, and of course we understand the many challenges that Sudan is facing. And of course, yes, the fact that economic reforms are being put on pause, on hold, unfortunately, and that you're about to face the lean season. It's good to see that you still have ground solutions in terms of developing a national plan, and that also the dialogues for the UNFSS happened. But of course, there are a lot of gaps that you mentioned. Also, a very interesting point on the importance of monitoring and surveillance mechanism that were also highlighted by many different countries at this point, and the difficulty that you face in terms of scaling up the prevention and management of acute malnutrition due to lack of funding. And we will go now to South Sudan, which should be ready to share also its experiences. Thank you. Do we have Mr. Sadiq from South Sudan? Is South Sudan ready? Otherwise, we will move to Nigeria, if Nigeria could take the floor.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This is Nigeria. I'm representing the Nigerian Sun Focal Point, Dr. Ukiri. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So I'll go straight to the solutions. Should I go straight to the solutions?
Yes, we're listening to you. The solutions and then your the support that you need would be super. Thank you.
Okay. What we've been able to do, the challenges are about the same: increased food prices, and because Nigeria depends heavily on importation of fuel, importation of fertilizers, and our food products, especially wheat. So those are we've had a lot of challenges and implementation of our national plan. So one of these solutions, the first is private sector engagement to encourage local production of fertilizers within the country, and also to encourage local production, to encourage our manufacturers to manufacture our nutrition commodities too, like small quantity lipid-based nutrient supplements. We distribute to the vulnerable groups under 5 and pregnant and lactating women, micronutrient powders, and also private sector engagement to also produce our for refineries for local production. We want local-based refineries. For example, in Lagos, there's ongoing discussion and the project have already started. Additionally, another solution is training of farmers and vulnerable households on homestead gardening of biofortified crops, and also supply of farm inputs to these households, that is seedlings, fertilizers to them. We believe homestead gardening will be able to will help these households, as the household, many of them don't even have the cash to buy food products. The prices of food products have skyrocketed this period. So if we're able to encourage homestead food gardening and we're able to supply biofortified crops, we'll have malnutrition will reduce, the food crisis will reduce maximally. And additionally, we'll be able to prevent micronutrient deficiencies. Another thing we've done is we use a multi-sectoral approach, because in Nigeria, we have the National Council on Nutrition, which is chaired by the Vice President. And this National Council on Nutrition is the highest decision-making body on nutrition. So we have regular coordination meetings. Then the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement in Nigeria holds regular quarterly meetings. And this involves different stakeholders from different sectors, from the different Sun Movement networks, the private sector being led by the Sun Business Network. We have the government, we also have the civil society, and we have the academia and research network. They've been able to, in 2020, research was carried out on the impact of COVID-19 on households, primarily on food consumption. So this has helped us. This multi-sectoral approach has helped. And additionally, advocacy, through the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, we've been doing advocacy, sensitization, and training for farmers on good agricultural practices. We hope in Nigeria we have land mass, we're able to, if we are able to scale up farming, and if many of our farmers, if they know what to do, if they actually sensitize that they know how to, the good practices, we want safe, not just larger production, but we want safe products that can be exported. We want our farmers to be able to produce food that will meet international food safety standards. So we've been doing this also. The National Social Safety Net Program under the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. This is another solution. We've been able to give conditional cash transfer, helping empowerment for women. These are the vulnerable groups. Then the home growth school feeding program is another thing that has been done, but this needs to be scaled up. Additionally, then we've been able to encourage farmers, our local farmers, to form clusters like farmers union, cooperative farmers, that will help them. That way they're able to get support, access support from the government, and also supply of farm inputs. Additionally, our policy programs, our policy documents, our programs have been expanded. For example, in Nigeria, the Community Management of Acute Malnutrition Program started many years ago, but the guideline was reviewed to include the vulnerable groups, the pregnant and lactating women. Even though still minimally, and targeted supplementary feeding program is still minimal, only in about 3 states supported by the World Food Program, but it has been expanded. And also, we also included the component of nutrition in emergency. So we have the policy backup for that. The potential gaps needing global support. The first thing we identified was we need support to build capacity for our nutrition staff across the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies on food crisis response. Also, we also need support. The government needs support to train our farmers on good agricultural practices, so that we can be able to produce crops that meet international food safety standards. That will help us to export some of our food products we produce massively. And additionally, the government needs support for funding, for timely supply and regular supply of biofortified crops to farmers. Also, support for local manufacturers of organic fertilizers, and local producers of our nutrition commodities in form of, this support will be in form of grants and aids. We also need support to scale up the targeted supplementary feeding program for prevention and management of moderate acute malnutrition. In addition, the government needs support the National Multi-Sectoral Plan of Action on Food and Nutrition. We have, it's costed and we have activities, but because of the high inflation rate, it has affected implementation. There's reduced coverage and reduced reach for the targeted population. So we need support to support and funding support for implementation of this, of the multi-sectoral plan of action. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Over to you.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing this this broad experience as well from Nigeria. It's very good to see. I mean that you still use very much the multi-sectoral approach, all that you have developed in terms of the training for farmers, and especially also this that looks like a good practice also in terms of trying to group the local farmers to form clusters, to have cooperation so that they can access the support from government. This was highly interesting. And how you are expanding also different coverage of programs to fight against acute malnutrition, integrating also the nutrition in emergency components, and beyond what we hear usually in terms of the funding being necessary in this to respond to this food and nutrition crisis. It's good also that you highlight the necessity to build capacity around food crisis. With that being said, I would like to suggest to Somalia to take the floor if they are here. If it's not the case, we will go to Botswana. And Botswana, if you could focus on maybe the solutions and the support that you need, because we are running a bit late, would be very appreciated. And if Botswana is not here, then we will go to Uganda. Or to Liberia.
Hello.
Yes. Hello, Ms. Trudy. Yes, we can hear you. Could you introduce yourself?
This is Uganda.
Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Namanja Gertrude, Sanfoko person, Uganda. Thanks for the opportunity, and I didn't get the chance to get. Nonetheless, drawing from other countries' experience, Uganda has also not been spared by the COVID-19 pandemic. Although uniquely for us, the COVID-19 pandemic, the effects of the pandemic in terms of food security weren't that adverse. We remained having supply chains, food production going on and supply chains. And for the case of Uganda, actually the prices then were never escalated. Food was really cheap. The biggest challenge was in terms of access, that is transport to areas of scarcity. So in light of that, actually, we find that the Russia-Ukraine crisis is one that has really escalated the problem, whereby we are faced with increasing food prices. And specifically, some of the issues that we can bring at hand is we look at increasing prices in terms of soap, that is washing, which actually might affect our outcomes in terms of the wash, the wash aspirations. Then we have also the oil, and also oil, I mean vegetable oils. Then increasing fuel prices, which have actually escalated the food prices in terms of the transaction costs. Transport is quite high, and this has translated into high food prices. much as inflation remains at a single digit. So with that, as Uganda, what has government come up with? Government has boosted local production in terms of crude palm oil production, whereby land has been secured to expand local production of crude palm oil, which was basically being imported from, largely being imported from Russia and Ukraine. Then we've also gone to look at other vegetable oils, which we've been growing. So emphasis has been put on simsim and sunflower to really cover that gap. One of the major areas that we are looking at keenly in terms of food security is now the Karamoja area, which is really going to undermine our gains that we had made in light of nutrition. The Karamoja area, there is acute food insecurity there that is going to worsen the indicators in terms of wasting and stunting. Then also the other issue is the acute refugee malnutrition. You realize that Uganda, we operate an open refugee policy. And with the insurgencies around in Sudan and in Congo, we've gotten influxes of refugees. And these pose a danger in terms of our nutrition gains, especially in those communities where the refugees are being hosted. And the danger is actually not just in terms of nutrition, but also other service delivery aspects and security as a whole. So we really look at that as a key policy area where we really need intervention, and government is keen and looking at it with a keen eye. Then in terms of the gains that we are still counting on, government in terms of expanding social protection, we remain with the already existing social protection programs targeting the women, targeting the youths. But in addition to all this, targeting the elderly, in addition to all this, government has adopted the parish development model, whereby service delivery is being cascaded down to the parish level, to the community. And this is basically our magic bullet, whereby we really feel that the 36% of the vulnerable will be targeted. I'll give an example of targeting in terms of financial inclusion, whereby we would like to see at least a substantive amount of the 39% poor being escalated from a peasant economy into the money economy. That is what government is actually running now. It was launched in the first half of the year, and right now we are rolling out implementation. So the expectations are high, and we really feel that with the parish development model, service delivery being done at the household level, even all the nutrition, sorry, not the household, but parish level, we find that even our nutrition aspirations or our nutrition related programming with the different implementing partners is also looking at that area. So in terms of health coverage, water, transport, all these will be put into line and will be targeting better there. Then still in terms of social protection, government is also looking at propelling agro-industrialization. Like I indicated earlier on, we are quite a food basket, unlike other countries where corn and wheat are issues. We find that with Uganda, at least we are food diverse. It's only that now the issue is aspects of the quality of the food itself in terms of nutritious dense foods. So with agro-industrialization, we also look at it as a way of still bringing the vulnerable, the women and poor on board in terms of employment across the agro industrialization value chain. Then in light of also, escalating the nutrition programming, government has seriously adopted the commitments it made in the Food Systems Summit, whereby we've come up with a food systems transformation agenda, committees in place, spearheaded or convened by the Office of the Prime Minister. A food systems transformation roadmap is in place. And with this, we are looking at also mainstreaming aspects of nutrition to really scale our nutrition aspirations at that level. Then there is also emphasis in terms of food fortification. Specifically, we are targeting the schools, at least to ensure that the foods that the schools are procuring for the children are at least fortified. The aspect of fortification is now very key. So that is one of the among the angles that we are looking at. Then also through the Ministry of Health, we are doing the nutrient profiling. We are doing the nutrient profiling models for the different. Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Are you
Ms. Trudy,
hearing
we
me?
can hear you. We can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are also on the radar in terms of coming up with nutrient profiles models for the country, and efforts are already underway. So with that, that's part of our agenda. And come August, we'll be having the nutrition forum, which is a platform of the different players, stakeholders, but specifically the political leadership, as we really try to consolidate our gains and make much bolder commitments in terms of scaling nutrition. Then still as a country, we also efforts are underway to establish the SAN Business Network. Orientation has already been done for the different business partners identified, and the launch will be on by close of month. By close of month, the end of month, July. So basically, as for Uganda, that's where we're at. Thank you.
Many thanks, Ms. Sanfoko Point. Very interesting presentation. Good to hear about boosting local production, of course, as always, and your concern around protecting the most vulnerable, also through employment measures within the agriculture system. Also hearing that you have a whole transformation agenda when it comes to implementing the pathway of UNFSS, and also that you're trying to mainstream the aspects of nutrition while implementing this transformation agenda. This nutrient profiling model is also super interesting. We would like to find more. If you can share documents with us, that would be extremely helpful. And of course, we would be willing to support your efforts in your nutrition forum in August, and of course to support you, of course, for the establishment of your SAN Business Network. And we are very excited about this. And I would like to give the floor to Liberia now. Thank you. And if you want to also appear on camera so that we are not looking at an empty screen, that would be lovely if your connection allows. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Mamini Molai. I am joining you on behalf of Liberia. And I would like to be reminded of the question that I'm responding to. I know that we are discussing the global food crisis at this time. And we are describing our own situation.
Sorry, Ms. Mamini, if you could focus on, like just the solutions that you are foreseeing to inspire other countries, and then also the gaps that you foresee and the supports that you would like to have from the nutrition community and from the SAN movement, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So currently, we are working on our multi-sectoral nutrition strategic cluster plan. We have been working on this through COVID and then now with the global food crisis. So that is the solution that we are working on in regards to this. As of 2 days ago, we also launched the Rapid Food Security Market Information Survey, and that will be used to inform us as far as the food market when it comes to the cost of food. The crisis has definitely affected fuel prices, which has translated into higher transportation costs. So the transport of food is definitely high. And our staple food being rice, in Liberia, the Ministry of Agriculture has now engaged additional local farming cooperative to be able to scale up the production of that. So that is currently ongoing. And additionally, the population that is of most interest or priority is the adolescent group with young people, and also trying to get women. So women adolescent remains the priority. And there's a lot of work around maternal nutrition, adolescent nutrition integration at this time when it comes to the nutrition priorities. So it remains, the multi-sectoral nutrition strategy plan remains the solution that we have identified at this time. And we are using the Rapid Food Security Survey as a way to inform our strategy. And when it comes to gaps, the gaps remains with nutrition sensitive sectors, getting more when it comes to food fortification, when it comes to WATCH, and also when it comes to our private sector. The Sun Business Network in Liberia, we have had some initial engagement with them in getting them organized to engage the private sector, but that has not been formalized yet. So that's definitely where we have a gap. And secondly, when it comes to engaging additional actors outside of the nutrition space, especially in the nutrition sensitive sector, and also in the non-governmental sector. So trying to get more private sector engagement also is a gap that we have identified. And lastly, we are now beginning some work with our transportation stakeholders to see how we can engage them and have nutrition be considered as a priority in regards to planning for transportation and managing the transportation sector as well. So those are the few things I want to cover from my end, and over from me. Thank you.
Many thanks, Ms. Focal Point. So this is also extremely important. I appreciated the fact that you are not losing sight of having a strategic plan for nutrition being costed, like the grounds, the basis for the action. Also that you're doing this rapid food survey to inform on the food market. But also what you mentioned around transportation stakeholder, like to engage them. I think this is the first time that we hear that during the webinar, and it's extremely interesting to think about other stakeholders and how they could also support nutrition transportation in this regard. And of course, the importance of engaging the business sector and formalizing a Sun business network. So thank you so much for that. And we will move now to the last country, I think, which is Eswatini. Thank you. Ms. Glorious Dlamini, are you there?
Yes, I am there. Thank you very much.
You have
Thank
the
you very
floor.
much. I think even the Kingdom of Eswatini is affected by a lot of issues, which include the issues of increase in farming inputs, issues of food prices increase. As a country, I think as Lesotho has highlighted, we are also relying on a lot of imports for our food products. But currently we are now strengthening the issue of local production, because we have seen that a lot of issues that have affected us, even including the COVID pandemic situation that has affected us even as a country. So we are trying to make sure now that we are promoting the local production as a country. So in terms of the solutions that we have as a country, we also trying to strengthen social protection interventions, especially those that are targeting food and nutrition security, because we know that in some areas we have difficulties in terms of moving the products. As I have highlighted earlier, that issues of fuel prices have increased, then some of our people, they are not able to move around. So they need some of the interventions, they need to be closer to their areas. What we have done, another thing that we have done as a country is that we have established a multi-sector food and nutrition coordination mechanism, so that we ensure that we have collaborative planning and also reporting in terms of our food and nutrition situation as a country. And also to ensure that we improve the food security situation, the government is providing subsidies on farming inputs. And also we want to strengthen the issue of subsistence farming so that we improve access to food commodities to ensure diversity for our population. Another thing is that also government is also strengthening the issue of local markets for locally produced fruits and vegetables, trying to make sure they incentivize the farmers to produce more, because in some instances we find that the farmers were producing, but in terms of the access for our population, they were not able to access the commodities. So now the government is now ensuring that we have even local markets so that our farmers are able to actually sell their products, so that we avoid the issue of post-harvest losses that we have been seeing as a country. Another issues that we are actually dealing with as a country is strengthening interventions that are targeting the post-harvest losses themselves, as I have highlighted, especially the issues of fruits and vegetables, so that we ensure that we minimize the post-harvest losses, and also to ensure that the availability of the fruits and vegetables is throughout the year, because we know that some of the fruits and vegetables, we find that they are available, they are seasonal, they are available at a certain season. So you find that in some portion of the year, they are not available. So some of these interventions, they now include issues of preservation of some of our fruits and vegetables to ensure that they are available throughout the year. And also the country is also supporting homegrown school feeding interventions to support our local farmers, and also to ensure that we promote the issues of diet diversity in our schools through the school feeding program that we have as a country. Another thing is that the country has developed an investment plan to strengthen support for smallholder farmers to produce food commodities, especially issues of fish production. We know that as a country, Swaziland, we are a landlocked country, so we do not have much access in terms of the fish production in the country. So the government is actually assisting us now to ensure that we have farmers that are dealing with fish production through the investment plans that have been developed. And also the country is promoting issues of climate smart agriculture. As a country, we are also affected by the issues of climate change. So the country is now on the process to ensure that we strengthen climate smart agriculture as well as urban agriculture to ensure that we address issues of food insecurity in the country. Another intervention that we have as a country is the promotion of water harvest technologies to strengthen household food and nutrition security gardens as a country, because we are trying to make sure that even the households themselves, they are able to produce their own fruits and vegetables so that we enhance availability. I think we have learned from the issue of, from this problem of COVID-19, because people were not able to travel to where the food is. So and then the country said, no, let's now strengthen the issue of household food production so that everyone has food available at the household level. And also we have engaged the private sector to strengthen market-led farming through the provision of inputs in collaboration with government. So the private sector is also assisting us in terms of ensuring that the farmers, they have subsidies and also they have inputs for ensuring that we strengthen the production of foods at community level. And then in terms of the potential gaps that requires support even from the Sun Movement, I think as a country, we also need, we as a country in collaboration with our partners, we need a strong advocacy and resource mobilization mechanism to ensure continued support for food and nutrition security interventions as a country. We need to lobby the government, especially the politicians, so that at parliament level, we are able to gain support for food and nutrition interventions in the country. And also another loophole that we have as a country is in terms of emergency preparedness, mitigation and response for food and nutrition security. Especially, I think the support that we might need is in terms of actually the development of a comprehensive emergency response preparedness and response plan for the country, so that during emergencies, we are not taken by surprise. We know exactly what we need to in terms of the response especially for the food and nutrition security sector. I think that is all that we have as a country for Eswatini. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Simpoko Point from Eswatini. And I think that we have reached the end of the intervention of countries. We had a Q&A session, but we are aware of the time. We are past already 25 minutes. So what I would suggest we do is just, I could wrap up with just the main elements that were highlighted, and then I can just give you just a few thoughts on the next steps that we are suggesting. So first of all, in terms of the consequences, the effects and possible effects, we've heard quite a similar situation, unfortunately, with prices of food being on the rise, as well as energy prices, as well as fertilizers, of course. And some of you are more dependent than others on importation, but like we heard several times, even the ones that are less dependent on importation are also, of course, impacted by this crisis with the rise in energy costs, resulting also in price inflation when it comes to food products. So then, of course, you foresee that this will result or have already resulted in less diversity of food at the household level and less number of meals being taken. And this could, of course, lead to a rise in malnutrition, as we all know. Then in terms of integration of nutrition in the food crisis response and mechanism, it seems that nutrition is quite well represented from what we have heard today. And also that you're really building on your experience from the COVID-19 pandemic, also to be more resilient, to work more also in an emergency setting. And also the fact that you are also building on the pathways from the UNFSS in order for some of you to practically transform your food production and your value chain. So this is very, very inspiring to hear. And of course, also, I think that we gladly heard that there is a lot of expansion on programs like the safety net. Can it be a cash transfer or vouchers, subsidies from the government, removal of taxes for importation of some of the products that are most used by the population, school feeding, and of course, again, this encouragement for local food production, which is quite key with the say from Dr. Cisse that we won't forget today, local solution for local problems. You have also raised the issue of data a number of times. Data is certainly key when it comes to targeting the areas that most need the support, and also in terms of early warning systems that might have also helped your countries to react immediately or prevent even the effect of the crisis. So this certainly needs to be tackled. And if you have good practices when it comes to building in multi-sectoral information system, feel free to share them. It's going to be much appreciated by many countries, I'm sure. And in terms of also, yes, very interesting to hear that you're liaising all the systems together and thinking also about climate change and making sure that the approaches when it comes to food production are also done in a climate sensitive way. And then in terms of support, we have heard from you today that of course you would like some help in terms of advocacy when it comes to making sure that we don't look, and it was the subject of our webinar, that we safeguard our nutrition gains in the midst of this food and nutrition crisis. And also that we advocate for you in terms of the funding being maintained or even increased for nutrition, with all that we've been sharing today in terms of information on the effects of this crisis. And that you would like also to benefit from support regarding capacity building when it comes to tackling this food crisis, and also being more prepared, so emergency preparedness, and also engaging more the private sector. And I think an interesting step forward in order to do that is basically what you have already mentioned, meaning to support the formalization or further strengthening and functioning of the Sun Business Network. I hope I have managed to summarize the richness of all the content that you have shared, and I would like to thank you warmly again for your rich and inspiring participation. And as the next steps, just to quickly tell you that we will try to identify from what has been said today good practices, to come back with you with suggestion for another round of webinars, looking at then good practices already documented from what you have shared. So bear with us for some of you, because we will come back to you to document a bit what you have said in order to inspire each other, because again, the Sun movement is all about this, all about the peer-to-peer exchanges. That's the strength of the movement. And with that, I would like to warmly thank you again and wish you a nice evening or morning or whenever you are in your day. And thank you so much to all again.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.